It's day 436 without a head coach for the Charlotte Hornets. We talk about what the hell's going on some more. This time, David Walker joins us. That's all today, Locked On Hornets.
You're Locked On Hornets, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
In a minute, cuz we live.
It's Locked On Hornets, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. It's your team every day. Thanks for making us your first listen. We are free and available anywhere you get your podcast, and that includes YouTube. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. You can make every moment more. Right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 bet. That's $150 with any winning $5 bet. That's it. Visit FanDuel.com/LockedOn to get started. As always, there's Doug Branson doing the cha-ching sound. You can find him on his Substack, everyhornetsboxscore.com. There you can also find his subtext information. I'm Walker Mehl. Listen to me, WFNZ, every weekday from 12 to 3 p.m. And there's the David Walker. You can find him on Twitter at David B. Walker. David, how are you doing in these trying times, not having a head coach for your favorite professional basketball team?
Oh, I know. I mean, I'm doing okay though because we've got NBA playoffs, man. You know, I mean, it's just a fun time of year. It must be even more fun, you know, if you're directly involved. But we can watch from the outside, I suppose. It's still fun.
Well, this is This is what I wanted to talk to you about because, you know, I have family in Indiana. They get to experience the postseason a lot more frequently than we do and have a lot more success in the postseason than we do. They even have this fun, underrated NBA rivalry between the Knicks and the Pacers. Now it's reinvented with the new crop of guys for each of these franchises. It's a rivalry. There's a 30 for 30. Deal with it. And so when we have the Pacers in Madison Square Garden, it's a lot of fun. But we don't get to see the Hornets there, right? Like here's OKC frolicking. Same thing with Minnesota. And we are Squidward in the Easter Island house watching everybody have fun from afar. You had a buddy that actually decided, you know what? I'm done with it. I'm done without postseason basketball. I'm going to pick a team and go see some action live.
Yes. Shout out to my buddy Chris Littman. If you see Chris on the streets, folks, give him a high five and a pat on the back. He said enough with this. He just wanted to see some playoff basketball, and he did a search. He looked around at the schedule, round one, game one. What's the most feasible flight? He picked a good one. He went to Minnesota. He saw Anthony Edwards. He saw the Minnesota Timberwolves open up their playoff run, and they've yet to lose. He claims, you know, he got on the ground floor, and ever since then they've never lost. But what a huge move. Left his new baby or his young child.
New baby.
Left his young child, not a new baby. Left his young child and his wife.
It's always a baby. It's a baby until they graduate high school, college even.
If you see her on the streets, give her a high five too, because she was a good sport for letting him go. But I mean, that's the depth. That's where the Hornets fans are going. And salute to him. He said it was an awesome time. But yeah, I mean, that's about as close as the Hornets fans are getting to the playoffs. Larry Johnson is about as close as the Hornets are getting to the playoffs. He's sitting courtside at MSG.
I know.
It's rough, guys. You know, I mean, it's fun, but you just want to be a part of it. I mean, and the Timberwolves are a perfect example because they went through some dark times too. They've had some success, Western Conference Finals, but you know, the Hornets fans are ready, dude.
Well, like, you get to watch it. These moments are so damn fun, especially with the stars that are emerging for each of these franchises. But Doug, like, even going to you, 2015-16, that playoff run was so fun. I was an intern at ESPN 730 at the time. I was not on air. I was not hosting, but I was like doing some behind the scenes work. You guys were doing a pod, right? Like that 2015-16. Yeah. Like back in the success days, I want to do that. Like, is that okay? I would like to have that happen, but I have to, like, when that was going on, getting the information ready for everybody else to talk about, that was fun. Like, everybody was having a good time, and I just want that feeling again. I imagine you want the same, Doug, like being able to talk about this squad in any kind of realm that resembles 15-16.
Yeah, well, what's funny is that I think off that 15-16, if I remember correctly, off that, I think David and I had the bright idea of, hey, why don't we do something every day on the Hornets? Because there was so much interest. It seemed
so
like
much excitement.
Yeah, and they got bounced from the first round, sure, but it was so close. And you felt like, okay, maybe they'll run it back. Maybe they'll bring some of these free agents back, and then they didn't, and we decided to go every day, and we've been going every day since, in this in this realm.
You can see it
And
on
we'll
our
keep
faces.
going, damn it.
Yeah, YouTube has shown us going every single day, and I did not catch the positive wave. I came in at the lowest time. They say to buy low. I don't think that should
Keep holding.
apply.
Well,
to
there's a
Hornets
certain
basketball.
Still holding.
There's certain things that you buy low. Stocks. You don't want to buy like bread low. You know what I'm saying? Like, there's certain things that you would like to buy at their adequate price to make sure that you're getting an adequate return. But I do want to shout out Chris for taking matters into his own hands. And in fact, if Chris, I think I know for a fact that Chris is a season ticket holder, maybe still season ticket holder. I don't know with these prices going up. But if I were Chris, I would send the bill for that Minnesota game to the Hornets. CC Rick Schnall and Gabe Plotkin and say, I would like to be reimbursed because I've been without playoff basketball for so long. That's what I would do.
Oh, he asked me for Gabe and Rich's email. I'm not kidding. Send
it to him. Send them the receipts if you kept them.
Oh, man. Yeah, that's the last time I remember celebrating a Hornets victory game, like in public and high-fiving people. We watched that Game 5, right, in Miami when the Hornets won, coming back here for Game 6, right, to close it out. Is that right? And it was so exciting, man. It was so awesome. I still had to ask the bar to turn the Hornets on, but we'll get there one day.
Game 6. Game 6 was purple shirt and Dwayne Wade going off for 1,000,000 threes, and then they went back to Miami for Game 7, and you knew at that point they were going to get smoked.
Yeah.
But the thing is, like, you can trace all of this back to that time and that follow-up season when here's the thing, they could have run that back. Let's not get it twisted. The franchise at that time could have brought folks back. It just would have meant that they would have gone into the apron. I love when Clifford dances around this. He did it a little bit in his final, season wrap up, and some of the press conferences that he did around stepping down when he was reflecting back on his time in that first run. Like, he sort of dances around this idea of like, well, we couldn't bring everybody back. And it's like, you could have. Clifford couldn't have. He didn't have control of the purse strings. But Rich Cho, really, Michael Jordan could have brought a lot of those players back and made some kind of sustained run, but they didn't want to pay for it.
Well, they did. I mean, yeah, like I hear you. Like, they've always been accused of being cheap, and they have been with Michael Jordan. There's no doubt. But also, I think the only guys they didn't bring back from that team, it was Jeremy Lin and Courtney Lee.
Pretty big guys, by the way. I mean, pretty crucial to the success.
But Jeremy Lin, remember, he got injured, and then that contract was terrible for Brooklyn.
Chaos theory, that might not have happened. That happened because he went to Brooklyn.
It finds a way.
Yeah. Well, nature finds a way, and MJ finds a way to be cheap around this franchise and keep him out of the playoffs. Yeah.
I don't blame him as much for that. I do, like Nick Batum, they paid as much money as anybody was going to pay him. Like MKG, it's just they had terrible luck and they didn't go back. But like, it was, plenty of off seasons to point to even after that. I mean, that's, for sure that we blame them for still not being able to reach the damn postseason. And so is there a blueprint to follow? Maybe we explore that. Coming up next on the Locked On Hornets podcast.
I got a blueprint. It's 2 words. Stay tuned.
I know it. Yeah. Stay tuned. I promise you may have heard it, a million other times before. Is there a blueprint? And if so, what small market blueprint is there to follow? OKC, Minnesota? Can you replicate any of those philosophies? We'll figure that out coming up next. Locked On Hornets. Before we do that, I want to tell you that this episode is brought to you by DoorDash. Moms are a gift, so give her the best this Mother's Day. And you can get gifts as thoughtful as she is with DoorDash. And you can select from hundreds of expertly crafted bouquets to the best of tech to self-care essentials, even more, delivered right to her door. And if mom has a sweet tooth, maybe she's a tech enthusiast, a beauty connoisseur, it doesn't matter. There's so many things that you can receive via DoorDash, so you can get all of your Mother's Day gifts all in one place at 50% off with your next order. Up to $15 when you spend 15 plus on your next flour, convenience, grocery, or retail order now with code LOCKEDONNBA. That's LOCKEDONNBA. Order using DoorDash today. Terms apply. This episode is also brought to you by LinkedIn Jobs. LinkedIn isn't just another job board. LinkedIn has a vast network, more than 1 billion professionals, which makes it the best place to hire. It gives you access to professionals you can't find anywhere else, and LinkedIn does all that while making the process easy and intuitive. Hiring is easy when you have that many quality candidates. So easy, in fact, that 86% of small businesses get a qualified candidate within 24 hours. LinkedIn knows that small businesses are wearing so many hats and might not have the time or resources to hire. LinkedIn is constantly finding ways to make the process easier. They even just launched a feature that helps you write job descriptions, making the process even easier and quicker. 2.5 million small businesses use LinkedIn for hiring. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/lockedonnba. That's linkedin.com/lockedonnba to post your job for free. Terms and conditions apply. More Locked On Hornets ahead. I'm going to guess the way to replicate this for you, Doug, is to do something. I'm going to mention that.
Ding,
it feels
ding,
like
ding.
you
got it, buddy. Make
Yep.
a trade, sign a free agent.
Yep.
Hey, call Dennis Smith Jr. before Brooklyn does. I mean, I got a lot of ideas, and they really all boil down to 2 words, and that's do something.
Yeah, it's even more so. Like, right, that's the way to do it. It's exercise all your options to getting better. And it felt like the Charlotte Hornets, it didn't feel like it was just reality. The Charlotte Hornets really just used the draft as their way to get better, and they didn't use trades, and they used free agency once, if you want to count Terry Rozier as this pseudo free agency, doing the sign and trade, and then you want to go with Gordon Hayward, who they spent a lot of money on, which, okay, like, lots of people like that at the time. I didn't think it was the right time, but at least that counts very much so as doing something. And they went out and got Gordon Hayward. But after that, it really didn't happen. Like, the off seasons were so boring. And always with the Hornets, man, what you would do is you would wait so deep into free agency before then you would get the best of leftover rumors. Lauri Markkanen comes to mind. Josh Hart is someone. Like, those were guys that were very deep into the process. It eventually is what landed you Kelly Oubre. But even so, it was so much later than everybody else. Everybody else is starting to sign these guys to make their team better right away, and they're not going to mess around and, get caught with their pants down. Like, they actually went out and got these players, let alone the trade market. Like, there are reasons to maybe not make some trades here and there. Not that many that the Charlotte Hornets have come up with, but like, okay, fair. Trades are hard to do. But free agency, man, just pay up for some of these players, and they never even did that. David, it feels like all these other teams in Oklahoma City, in Minnesota, in Indiana, continue to go down the list. It feels like they exhausted all of their ways to get better, and now they're getting rewarded for it.
Yeah, and they make the move maybe a step before maybe they should, and it works out. It tends to work out that way. I mean, look at Tyrese Halliburton right around the All-Star break was like almost the face of the NBA. He's on Team USA. He had a fantastic start to the season. Was basically hosting the All-Star game. They traded for Pascal Siakam, Rudy Gobert. Hornets were in talks with that. The Wolves back in the day trade for him. Look at all the guys the Knicks bring in. So like, we've just been, to Doug's point, we have been waiting for the Hornets to be in a position to have someone to add to. They have LaMelo Ball. Now they have Brandon Miller. Now they actually do have some assets in the form of draft picks and even some NBA players that you could put in, with the trade that would actually bring value to another team. So like, that's been the, you can talk yourself into seeing why they didn't do some things in the past, because their offer was never going to be the best one. You mentioned like the Donovan Mitchell scenario, trying to get in on that. They weren't ever going to beat somebody out in the past. They can get closer now, I think it feels like. And they have to add outside of the draft. You have to explore all your opportunities, right? Free agency and trade. Feels like trade is going to be more likely with this team because free agency is always going to be a hurdle. And
I don't know what the obsession is with sustainable. Like this whole, the word that keeps popping up, sustainable, sustained winning. I'll take, Milwaukee flying to the sun and grabbing a championship. Toronto, it looks like Denver. This might be the new thing where like small markets, they strike on a draft pick, they make some trades, they go up, they get to a conference finals or they get a championship, and then, some other team comes along like a Minnesota. It doesn't look like there's going to be another San Antonio that's going to win, a lot of what?
And that's another team to keep an eye on. I mean, they're going to be trading for someone sooner rather than later to put with Wemby. No question.
Yeah, and you have to ask yourself as a fan, like, why would the Hornets focus solely on the draft? And you could have a sort of propaganda team positive outlook and say, well, a lot of teams do well, really hitting on the draft, and then eventually they make the trades when they're ready. But honestly, I think it's all about money. Like, it's the cheapest way to do this whole thing, and it's the way to get as many players on your roster as possible without ever threatening to go into the tax. But at some point, they have the blueprint. There is no like strange, mysterious blueprint. It's always been the same, whether you're a small market or a big market. It's get the checkbook out, go and either make some trades for players with bigger contracts, veterans, or go out in free agency. And if you're a smaller or mid-sized market, you've got to overpay a little bit. It's not difficult. The only difficult thing is whether or not the owners are going to look at it and say, we're willing to take the risk, as David said, you have to take the step before knowing exactly where that step is going to lead. And hopefully this new set of owners, look, they're asking fans for more money via raising season ticket prices. They are promising upgrades to the arena and upgrades to practice facilities. Eventually they have to upgrade the roster. Eventually. You think.
Yeah, you would think. There are signs to point that they are heading in the right direction. We've talked about this offseason. Until the head coaching search, it's gone pretty well. I think Jeff Peterson is a well-respected GM. He was next up on the list, right? I like getting him in the organization because he was going to be a general manager somewhere, and I'm glad that we got him with a well-respected guy like that. And it seems like all the moves after that make a lot of sense. It feels like they're even smarter than just making sense, just reaching status quo. It feels like they went even beyond that with some of these hires. I hope that it's not all undone without them being able to get their first or second choice at head coach, and hope that if they don't get those two, that they're prepared a little better than they were last time, because it was a panic move for Steve Clifford when you go after him again. And then you guys are right. Like, it is the risk here, because if you think about it, it really does all start with a draft. I don't think any of us are disputing that. Minnesota has 2 number 1 overall picks on their board. Oklahoma City traded all their stars. You have to draft. This goes all the way back to Russell, James Harden, Kevin Durant, and then you do the Bob Bass thing and then just exchange star after star after star. Okay, now we'll exchange those stars for draft picks and see what we can do. And then you even have Minnesota, where as I mentioned, the 2 number 1 overall picks, Jade McDaniels is their pick as well, but then they made the big move going after Rudy Gobert, and even Pascal Siakam is a little early, and they still were able to win a first-round series, right? It's the early move. Instead of reaching this checkpoint, okay, once we reach this point, then we'll go all in on this trade.
We have to prove that we can win a play-in game. I mean, that's a whole, the whole thing. Yeah, it does seem like they're waiting on something,
right?
And it's a chicken and the egg scenario. I think you have to invest and take some risk. And hopefully, look, we got the hedge fund bros running the organization now. Hopefully they understand that sometimes you got to put your money on, to the middle of the table, go all in and see what happens. And now they have the assets. Before, as we were talking about pre-show, when they were in the Donovan Mitchell rumors, maybe they didn't have the number of picks that Cleveland had to offer. Cleveland could come over the top and snag Mitchell away. But now with these moves that they made at the deadline, they've not only got an NBA level bench rotation now, they've got, some assets to make some deals, but they have to be willing to spend to make that happen.
Yeah, and good point. And to be fair, like, maybe that's the first step, right? They finally got rid of some of those older assets, finally got some value in return. And as you mentioned, even improved their bench in doing so, and got, draft picks to boot. So that is a good sign. It's just not the one that's going to it's not going to be the tipping point. You got to see some more moves coming down the pike.
But if this coaching search ends in Steven Silas as the head coach, I'm not gonna.
No,
I'm not gonna say. Look,
oh, that feels bad. No,
I'm not gonna say. I'm not gonna go Tim Legler here and give you 100% like he did on the Jamal Murray suspension. And now, anytime you go on here and say 100%, you look foolish. But if Steven Silas ends up the head coach, if the Hornets go back to the future again on the head coaching position, 99% might quit the show. I won't be able to.
It's a family. Hey,
yeah.
It's all family.
Don't do that to me. Don't give me Steven Silas and then leave me, Doug. Don't you do that. Last thing I'll say too. The Hornets weren't making a decision. they weren't deciding to go in one direction for so many years, right? It feels like at the trade deadline they did. They because when you don't make a decision, then you end up in no man's land and you don't have a lot of assets and you don't have stars. Okay, now you have assets and you got really good value from PJ. I mean, I would say what? Like if we want to do the cents and dollars thing, like 125 cents on the dollar for PJ. I didn't expect them to get an unprotected pick after a top two that may turn unprotected after that. And then with Terry Rozier having an unprotected after a first lottery protected, like that's more than 100 cents on the dollar. And you decided that, okay, we're in asset collection mode. They even told you, which is hilarious, they even told you we didn't make those moves expecting to get better, and yet we did.
Honesty.
Rick Schnall told you specifically that, which if Adam Silver cared at all, he might be like, I don't want you really saying it, but okay, nobody's listening anyway. Who cares?
Right.
I'm not going to give you any punishment. So, it's at least they have the assets, man. Like those first round picks are a big damn deal, and we'll see how they use them. All right, let's go to the Sicko Satchel. Enough of our sickness.
Yes.
Coming up next, Locked On Hornets.
Don't go to sleep on the Hornets just yet.
Doug rummages through the satchel. David is here to answer your questions. We are all here to answer your questions and listen to your comments. That's still to come here, Locked On Hornets. I told you already, game off. We got to pause here to talk more about Monopoly Go. It's your favorite new game. I know what you're saying, though. Flag on the play. You already talked about Monopoly Go, but there's just so much good stuff in this game. In Monopoly Go, you can team up with friends for timed tournaments where you work together to build up each other's boards. The more you win together, the more awesome prizes you unlock, and there's so much to get. Unique stickers you can trade with friends to complete albums for big prizes. Cool new playing pieces to travel the boards with. Always liked the dog. I think the hat was cool, too. I like both of those pieces. You also have hilarious emojis for taunting friends when you smash their buildings or heist their vaults. It gets a little aggressive on Monopoly Go. Plus, Monopoly Go feels new and exciting every day with constantly changing tournaments and challenges. A ton include their own unique mini games like digging for treasure or a robot pachinko machine. And there's always new timed events that help you win big, like massive multipliers for everything you win or rent frenzies. There's always something fun to discover in Monopoly Go. So get off the bench, go download it now for free, Google Play or the App Store. Game on, Monopoly Go. More Locked On Hornets ahead.
I was a thimble guy.
Thimble's cool. Doug, you are the keeper of the Sicko Satchel. Can't wait for the question. We got some good ones. I know you're excited about the questions that we had last episode, so hopefully they deliver once more. What you got for the people?
Yeah, before we do that, though, I want to kick it to David because on the last episode we talked about Pat Riley of the Miami Heat getting super honest, Uncle Pat. Now, David is on a first-name basis for some reason with Pat Riley.
That's right.
So, David, what did you think of – I don't know if you've seen these quotes, but Pat Riley was pretty explicit about his thoughts on Jimmy Butler's trash talk of the Celtics while he wasn't playing, and he had some interesting thoughts on Tyler Hero being – he called him fragile. Like, what do you think of that honesty?
Yeah.
Do you think are you like me and you think, hey, the Hornets could use some of that Uncle Pat honesty?
Oh, my God. Pat is the godfather, okay? And he gives it to you straight. And he gives it to you unfiltered. All right. And that's what his post season exit interviews are the stuff of legend. And this was no different. I mean, this was fantastic. When you let your star player have it like that, and your secondary scoring option have it as well, it's just it's refreshing when to get a little peek behind the curtain or just shed a little light on what we're thinking. I mean, my gosh, no wonder Miami and the city of Miami defend him with such honor, as they should. I mean, he's a legend, and he's built that organization up, so he can say whatever he wants. And I think the buck stops with him, so that goes a long way. I mean, that sends a message though too, as they're going into the offseason, what they're going to do. So it's refreshing, and Pat is he's just keeping on. It looks great too, doesn't he?
Always.
Looks spry.
But look, you can do that when you know that your organization can and will reload the roster will spend what is necessary, will do what is necessary to go out and get the assets that you need to keep on keeping on, even if Jimmy decides he wants to go somewhere else. And so that's the leverage that you have as Pat Riley. Hornets don't have that. That's why Clifford has to come out in press conferences and treat LaMelo Ball with kid gloves. Because this franchise operates as if LaMelo Ball leaves, it's all over, and they can't do anything about it. They can't do anything after that. And so when you have an organization behind you that says, no, listen, let's get honest, let's make everybody better. Whatever happens, happens, and if people leave, we'll reload and we'll go find what's necessary. That's how normal, good culture operations run, and I hope that this new ownership group is ready to run the Hornets like that.
Yeah, I do think Steve Clifford has been very honest and straight with these guys, not in front of the camera, but in front of the camera. He's certainly not going to do that in the public eye. The other thing is, man, so many problems that come from the Bill Belichick coaching tree is because these coaches try to act like Bill Belichick, even though they haven't accomplished what Belichick has. So if Mitch Kupchak tries to go up to the podium and speak like Pat Riley, and he is very much not like Pat Riley, does it carry the same weight? Or is it Mitch Kupchak? You're talking about the guy that got destroyed in the play-in a couple times? Like, nah, we're good. Oh, okay, you had Kobe and Shaq, but that was a Jerry West thing. That wasn't you. Like, that was somebody else. Okay, you traded for Gasol. Cool. Maybe that's it. But we know he doesn't carry the weight that Pat Riley does. I wonder if it would hit the same. That's my only question.
Yeah, no, fair point. But I'll say this whole thing about like, oh, well, don't do it in front of the media, do it behind closed doors. I don't think anyone was doing it in either place. And here's my evidence, is that every time a player leaves the Charlotte Hornets, they go in front of the media and they blast the Hornets as an organization, their culture, lack of culture, their lack of fight, their lack of winning. Every single time a player leaves, they have something to say. They never say it while they're here. There is a benefit to going out in front of cameras and saying something, putting the chips on the table and saying, hey, I put a lot of chips on the table in this show, but putting the chips on the table and saying, look, here's the situation. We've got to fix this. Like that, there's some value in that. Anyway.
All right, put the satchel questions on the table. What you got for us?
I want to use this as a lead-in to do some shoe talk with David Walker, so we're going to go to Keith here. Oh. After hearing what Anthony
Chief Keith.
After hearing what Anthony Edwards had to say about Team USA basketball after Game 1 of the Western Conference semifinals, I would like to push the Brandon Miller USA Basketball Select Team agenda. That is all. Keith, not a question, and I love it. I love people dropping comments.
Yes.
Straight
the
fire.
The agenda satchel is strong, too. We can have the agenda satchel.
That's right. And here's what Anthony Edwards had to say when asked, LaForce asked him about scoring 35-plus over the last 3 playoff games. What's changed? And he said, I put in work this summer. Big shout-out to Team USA. They got me ready for this season. Yes, I'm all in on Brandon Miller. I'd love if LaMelo Ball were healthy enough to play on some kind of USA team, because it matters when you play with the best players in the world. I mean, there's some learning, there's some body readiness that has to happen when you do that.
Yeah, you see that all the time. These guys that play, especially on Team USA in the summer, they take a jump. Happens almost every time, especially with some of these younger guys. It would be perfect for Brandon Miller. I mean, we've been driving. It would be awesome for LaMelo, too. Feels like that ship maybe has sailed, but he's still a young guy. I don't know. Who's to say? But Brandon Miller, man, if he gets on that Team USA roster, or even gets in the tryouts, I mean, honestly, and gets a little taste of that, I think it'd be awesome for him. And he's, feels like a good fit, or somebody, a young guy that they would want on whatever, select team or B team or whatever you want to call it. So, yeah, man, we got to push that agenda. And maybe the Hornets should push it a little too.
Hey, why not?
It always comes down to the Hornets doing something. June 7th, 2016, I'm reading an article stating USA Basketball announced that Hornets forward center Cody Zeller is among 25 players that have been chosen for the 2016.
Okay, so it doesn't work every time.
Well, is that the last one? Is that the last one?
Men's select team. He was selected to the men's select team back then. I don't know if it's the last one. I just know that Cody Zeller was a part of the 2016 select team. Brandon Miller absolutely should be a part of the select team.
So that leads us into a conversation that I wanted to have with you, David. Anthony Edwards, new shoe, AE1.
Yes.
It looks neat. What's the review? What's the shoe review?
Oh, my God. This thing is taking the sneaker world by storm. I mean, already before this run in the playoffs, people were saying best signature shoe of the year. best new shoe in a long time, best first signature. It's his first signature shoe with Adidas. It's got a lot of Yeezy DNA in it, is what I see. But you kind of have to look for that. But it's definitely
and
there.
You don't want to really talk
man,
that up too much, right?
No, you don't. They're not. They're not.
Yeah.
That is not
just simmer down on that.
Well, I'll say Adidas probably has a lot of those in stock, so maybe there was some actual DNA and that they just took old ones and cut them.
But I tell you,
it's a cover-up tattoo. Is that what you're saying? That's what they did in the form of this shoe,
right?
But I tell you why it's selling and why it's hot and why it's the shoe that everyone's talking about. It's because he's awesome. And he's dunking over people, and he's not losing any games in the playoffs, and he's fun, and he's young, and he's a great interview, and he's a great soundbite, and he seems like a nice guy, and everyone likes him, and he's doing things on the court.
He wants it.
I mean, that's where shoes and everything, these stories, that's where they sink in. That's where they really mean things. I bought my son a pair last week. You know, there's a whole wall of LaMelos. There's a whole wall of LaMelos right there. We're gearing up for summer camps. He said, let's see what these AE1s are all about. And I can't blame him. He's got plenty of LaMelos, but you know what I'm saying? I mean, they're taking the world by storm because he's doing that. So for him, Adidas, Minnesota, it's a pretty cool time.
Well, yeah, and I don't know how the shoe game works, but I feel just sort of instinctually that at some point LaMelo Ball will have to feel some pressure to do whatever it takes to stay healthy and compete and win for the Charlotte Hornets in order to keep those. Like how long can he keep his shoe sales afloat if he's sitting on the bench? I don't know how all of this works. If he's just like a fashion icon or something, and he could do it without playing, but it seems like he's got to have some pressure.
Out of sight, out of mind. You know what I mean? And like we should say, LaMelo's shoes did take the league by storm when they first came out. I mean, they're still very popular.
Yeah, kids like them. I know a lot of the kids are still wearing them. Yeah,
for sure. But he's not playing. You know what I mean? And the Hornets are no good. So at some point, that starts to drag you down, I think.
All right, that'll do it for Locked On Hornets. Thanks for making us your first listen. We're free and available anywhere you get your pods, and that does include YouTube. Make sure you follow David on Twitter for more great shoe takes at David B. Walker on Twitter. Doug Branson, find his Substack, everyhornetsboxscore.com, and listen to me on WFNZ every weekday from 12 to 3 p.m. Have a great rest of your day. We'll be back with you tomorrow.
Bye-bye.